Hey, folks, welcome back to another Boons and Banes podcast featuring me and my co host, Torm DK. This is our fourth episode. One little quick thing before we get into the episode, I just want to say if you want an audio only version of this podcast, I'm going to make a pinned comment below. Like that comment, and if it gets, I think, above like 50 likes in the next couple of days here, I will work on getting an audio only version out. We had a lot to talk about today. We'll be talking about Chapter 1 changes, whether that lived up to the hype. Of course, all the controversy surrounding Tibeb and the challenge store, as well as the Hobbit offers, updates on all that sort of stuff. What some of the new player offers actually look like. Torm went ahead and made a new account and kind of leveled it up and found out that there's actually a bunch of new offers that, if you started playing on launch, maybe you didn't see those or didn't have access to those. What does the new account growth look like? How many new players are we adding to the game, on a daily basis? Are we keeping players? We're going to talk about all that sort of stuff. Elrond, Nazgul's, Chapter 4. We got a lot to talk about in this episode. So in order to make it not 3 hours long, I think we're just going to jump right into it. And that's with this first little infographic thing I have right here. Let me hide my camera. So basically, what I've compiled here is essentially a timeline of, when Chapter 1 of the raid launched. Raids launched on July 25th, right? That Chapter 1. When we started to get complaints about the bomber, people were really upset about the RNG. And that basically happened that very first week. Basically, people's first raid, people were like, something seems off, right? So we kind of pegged that as 8-1 here. We couldn't find a particular instance of CG Heem saying, hey, we know this is an issue. I've relayed that to the dev team. I'm sure there was, because I think I remember seeing that, but we just couldn't find that particular date when she did that. But on the Tana interview about September 14th here, Nick Reinhardt basically acknowledged that it's a work in progress, that something is coming in the pipelines. And then like the very next week, they got official confirmation that those changes were going to happen. And then they implemented those changes basically the week after. So I'm just kind of putting this out here because we're going to talk about challenge store stuff and Tibeb and Hobbit stuff. And I think this is a good baseline for how they acted previously. And so you can see I've got all the days here between each of these sort of events. And then the total is about 65 days from when the raids launched to kind of when the changes got implemented total. So about 2 months. This is kind of bringing us into a bigger point here, though, about whether Chapter 1 changes sort of lived up to the hype. Torm, what do you think about the Chapter 1 changes?
Hello, Swag. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so I think, like we said in the last interview or episode, right? Thank God it happened. It's made Raid 1 actually fun, or Chapter 1 actually fun. Score-wise, we've seen very, very large improvements overall from the community. So yeah, I think it was a very positive thing. They probably should have launched the raids with, but yeah, very nice to see that it happened.
Yeah, what are you getting in Chapter 1 now?
So yeah, I guess my approach to raids has always been not to do too much tryharding, right? So I generally do not do more than 2 or 3 attempts per team.
Okay.
But I scored a little over 3 million last time.
A little over 3 million. Okay.
I think I do all right. Definitely. I guess maybe some of the whales, definitely some of the more tryharding free to play are doing more than that in Chapter 1.
I think I categorize myself in the tryhard category for raids for sure. At least at the moment, I'm definitely like that. I think I'm getting this last round. I got north of, I think it was like maybe 4.2 to 4.5 mil, something in there. Anything over 3 is probably excess for Chapter 1. But I'm just going to echo what you said, which is essentially seeing massive score increases across the board for Chapter 1. And I feel like that's where you're actually going to get most of the gains that you need to get to the next chest for your guild, are just big increases in Chapter 1 score.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess the fun part is that while we will get into Chapter 4 specifically, right? But right now, Chapter 2 is actually the sore thumb, I would say, in that 1 and 3 are probably more easygoing, maybe in a sense, whereas 2 and 4 basically, that's where the game tells you it actually hates you. So
right. Okay, so let's transition just keep these timelines in mind right here, because we're going to transition sort of into what's happening with Tibeb and the challenge store and basically the Hobbit offer stuff. Do you want to kind of give a brief overview of kind of what has happened?
Yeah, so I guess the brief overview is that the day we feared had actually arisen, meaning a new character was added to the challenge store without CG having really looked at the challenge store these past over 180 days now at this point. So that of course was a fairly large slap in the face to those of us that have actually bothered building Haradrim. I would guess since I have done Haradrim on all of my accounts, meaning I have actually 4 accounts now where Haradrim is the second team I've built, so I felt the slap quite hard. And due to this, I made a feedback post on it, and you've also updated. I see some of the timelines, but basically the feedback post got 300 upvotes in 12 hours or something. So it's something the community feels quite, I would say, almost aggressive about. Which I think makes sense because Bolg and Halberad, the reason why we accepted that they were in the challenge store to begin with was that their teams are incomplete, whereas Haradrim is a full team that actually does quite well once you get them built. So I think a lot of us that has marquees at 5 stars had been waiting for Tibeb and Beleko to be available, so that we could see the gains that some of the Krakens are actually showing on the team.
Right. Yeah. So I think some of the big things to point out here, it's just that Tibeb is more expensive than Bolg and Halberad. She's in the challenge store, which is already a problem, but also she's more expensive, and that actually has a big effect. She still takes close to 1.5 times longer to get to 7 stars than Bolg and Halberad, but it's also like 3.8 times longer than a hard node shard farm with 0 refreshes, and 5 times longer than the arena store. So those are kind of just some baseline numbers there. I think it's worth pointing out, and the reason that we talked about the timeline for the bomber changes as well is kind of to just now talk about this feedback post here from CG Heem, which is essentially like, the day that they implemented putting Tibeb into the challenge store, it was basically like an acknowledgement. Yeah, okay, we realize that we need to change the challenge store, and this is getting renewed attention and will be reprioritized with the current work. And basically, they had meetings the day of to kind of come up with actionable items for how to improve it and change it going forward, which to me is actually a very, very positive thing to see.
Yeah, I mean, definitely it is. I work professionally with development as well, and have my personal backlog for the items I am a PM for is more than 200 items at this point, right? So all the good ideas that people come up with, definitely it's alive on the backlog somewhere. It's just a matter of prioritization. So the word reprioritization was actually the word I was looking for, because like you showed in the initial screenshot, right, the 65-day turnaround time. That is not actually uncommon for development. If you have, because you typically work in 2-week sprints at a time, and typically whatever week you're in, the sprint is already ongoing. So you would have the next sprint already planned, and then presumably either the next sprint after and the one after as well. Those would be almost finalized, depending on how aggressive you're going. But since you typically do agile development, any high priority feedback item from your customers or the community, could potentially get reprioritized. But this also means someone needs to, a PM needs to look at it, needs to decide what is the right course of action. Then he needs to write up the specs for it. Then the developers needs to understand how this actually gets implemented, etc. This takes time, unfortunately. So I said that as well in my feedback post, right? I don't see any changes happening the next 2 sprints, meaning 1 month at the very least is the timeline to get this changed. And we will have to accept that as players, because it's perfectly normal from a development cycle.
Yeah, I understand that, and I think that's good insight, because I definitely don't work in development, so I have no idea about the timelines there. I think what strikes me here is kind of a combination of 2 things. Is that they said that they were going to increase essentially communication and be more of a, have less of a wall between players and development team so that there's more communication between those two when they recently addressed their communication a little bit ago. And I think they've done that. We've seen objective increases in communication. I've been a big fan of that, but to take the feedback from, like, say, your post in the suggestions and feedback channel in the Discord, see how strongly people feel about it, right? And then immediately okay, we're having a reprioritization meeting, or it's going to come up that we're going to reprioritize this in a meeting that very same day is pretty big to me. And the second point here that I want to point out the point is that this is happening with just people who are involved in the official Discord. So it is not feedback that is coming from like a separate content creator or whale chat, because I'm not involved in any of that. I don't know if they have them, but if they do, I'm not involved in any of that. So what my point is, they are taking community feedback as opposed to feedback from a select few, and they're listening to it, and they're trying to actually come up with actionable items on the day of. So this is something that obviously probably should have been changed with the initial star change. They probably should have taken a look at this. I know they've had some, other shit hit the fan basically around that same time. Raid reward stuff was a big issue back then, as well as, and then just trying to get the Chapter 1 bomber fixes out. But I think I'm cautiously optimistic is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I guess it depends on how they choose to implement. But
yeah,
I did some light math on the challenge store tokens as such, right? If we would need like 3 times the amount of currency that we get today to actually, make decent headway on this.
Right.
So yeah, we'll be very much interested in understanding what they want to do.
Yep. So this kind of transitions us into maybe the second part of what people were upset about when this last update hit, which is these Hobbit kind of bundles, the Hobbit Gate situation, as you liked to put it. Do you want to give a brief overview of that?
Yeah, so basically, it is not uncommon for this type of game to have new player offers that is only meant for new players. Basically, the idea is that, like, we talked about this a little on the last episode, right, where we said, the cost of acquisition for net new players is very high, and whales typically are slower to get involved. But you obviously want to catch the whale quickly so that they can get involved in the game and start opening the wallet, right? And this is basically what these bundles are for. The Hobbit Gate situation, as we refer to it, is that the very first one, the Hobbit bundle, right, the mega bundle. Originally, when the game released, both in the LTL release and then in global, there was an ABC type of offer, meaning the Hobbits you see there for 200 shards, that was actually offer number C, and you had a 50 shard one and a 100 shard one that cost either $5, $10, or $20, depending on how many shards you got. And it was randomized, so you couldn't choose which one you wanted. It was that choice was made for you whenever your account was booted up, which was, to me, super annoying because my account got the 50 shard one, so I never bothered with it. Whereas if you started a global release, typically you only saw the 200 shard one because probably their metrics had settled at that point. Either way, what happened was that when these new offers are all under a tag in the store called Road to Raids, which starts at level 7, I think it is, for net new accounts, and is meant to last up to level 30, where the account then can start raiding. Right. But this Hobbit offer initially was apparently bugged in a way that some of the veteran accounts actually saw it as well and was able to purchase it.
Yep.
Which then set the community aflame because apparently a lot of people like hobbits, and then they consider it unfair, basically.
Yeah. So I actually was an account that got these Hobbit offers, and it wasn't so much the Hobbit shards for me because I don't have RTR built up, but the amount of XP that they were giving in these offers for how much they were charging was pretty considerable. And just for people, some viewers here, this is the Danish currency here. So basically, each of these translates to about $20 US. So these are about $20 US packs that get offered to people when they start a new account now. And they also acknowledge this in this very first kind of post here. that Heem did the same day that the patch went out, basically saying it didn't go as intended. I'm echoing what Torm said here. I think these are probably meant for newer players, and they went out to players like me, and I'm not a newer player. But they did give an update, which is essentially that, if you did not see the Hobbit bundles when it went live this past week, in a future update, they will be making that available to you, so you have the option to buy it if you want. Basically, the whole Tibeb challenge store thing that they're talking about here is we're working on it, but we need to, think about how we're going to do this collectively, make sure we don't ruin the economy in the meantime. So if I remember correctly, there was also a similar situation with the previous Hobbit pack around when the first raid launched, I believe. And then they also did make good on that and offer the pack to people who didn't get it before. Does that sound familiar?
So the I guess the Hobbit Gate 0.5 version, that did not actually go out largely to the community as far as I understood. Basically, the people that were able to buy it the first time were able to buy it again. At the same time, Sam was actually bugged. So his adventure type, you could actually get a 7-star Sam with 4-star hobbits if you had them built.
Yep.
But my understanding was not that all accounts were able to see the second Hobbit bundle, right? They didn't actually choose to do this.
I see.
At least I didn't get the chance. So, but either way, I don't build Arthur, so that part does not matter to me. But yeah, I think this one is the first time they acknowledge this sort of error, and I guess another talking point is around both the fairness, of course, but also these things with these above average offers meant for new players.
Yep.
I don't have a personal problem with it. This does not affect me, even though we pay 3 times as much for the same type. But I would say that in the interest of fairness, CG should probably be open about this. I pinged him on this directly, and since it's a commercial, I mean, of course it's a hot potato, right? Because this is the commercial business, and there's a concern, well, we are showing then all the cards, etc. If we start
right. Yeah.
But we as a community track all this anyway. So for me, it's a little,
yeah,
it feels a little semantics based on this.
Just a quick sort of tangent on this, and then I think we'll try and move forward here into just new player stuff in general. But if I'm remembering, I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong here down in the comments. If I'm remembering correctly, though, Swigo for the longest time didn't do any sort of offer A/B testing, at least while I was playing. When I moved to MSF is when I actually learned that A/B testing was a thing, and I think they used it pretty regularly in that game. And now it seems that maybe it definitely happens in this game. I don't know if they currently do it in Swigo, but it definitely happens now in this game. And I think I'm just generally against the A/B testing. It feels unfair when the game is already unfair. Like, it's not unfair, it's just not competitive in a fair way, if that makes sense.
I feel much the same on this, actually, and I think my advice to CG would be to go to msf.gg, make a level 1 account, and then actually log into their web store, because they actually do live A/B testing right now. But they do it in a way where you as a player decide if you want offer A or offer B, right? So it doesn't matter if there's A/B testing if you as a player get to make that choice.
I see. Okay.
I think that is what I would say probably strings me up a little bit, is that the choice is made for me by someone who doesn't know what I want to do, which is where I guess the frustration comes in on A/B testing.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move on to new player stuff in general. So we've talked about some new player offers that you get, and you basically screenshotted these because you leveled up a new account essentially to see how many players we were getting, per in the new shard, essentially. How many players are we getting per day? So do you want to walk us through exactly what you found?
Yeah, so for the uninitiated, there has been arena shard tracking for quite a while. Basically, the premise is that those that bothers, all the PvP heroes, they want to have free-to-play accounts that basically handles like whale accounts. And the way they do that is they hoard because you don't get placed to an arena shard before you hit level 20
Right.
On an account level. So basically, they will artificially keep their progress low, and then just hoard hoard energy for, I don't know, a month or a month and a half or whatever. So because basically the game lets you store 5,000 campaign energy and 5,000 guild energy. This lets you hit level 35 day one, basically, right? So you will have an unfair, or not an unfair, but you will have an advantage over everyone else that starts that day, and then you can pretty much keep up with getting rank 1 for arena for a while.
Right.
But it's also a very good metric for collecting data on how many users are joining the game, because obviously CG does not give us any data on this. Because that's a commercial thing, but using burner accounts, as we call them, where you toss in an account every now and then, you can do some light math on the average amount of players that join the shard. We are on shard 12 currently.
Okay.
When the shard started, we were getting roughly 16 people an hour within the first couple of days. But when I tossed in this burner and did the calculation again, we're actually below 8 people an hour that joined the shard. So basically, growth is stagnant for the game right now, which is, of course, I guess, unfortunate, especially with the AMA they held a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, that is probably the next big thing we will want to listen for clues on.
Yeah.
What they will do for user acquisition.
Yeah,
because
so
stagnation
not
is not
good.
what we want at this stage, I guess.
Right. Yeah, and I'm not a game developer. I don't know exactly how these things work, but yeah, it seems to me in my naivete here that they have chapter 4 of the raid out. They've got one complete big feature, right? Is this raid that they've released. It we'll talk about it later, but chapter 4 looks great. It feels good to fight the Balrog. I don't know, it seems menacing. I think it hits a lot of those gameplay points there. Now it seems to me it would be a good time to sort of ramp up ad spending. Unfortunately, ads do cost quite a bit at the end of the year here, right? Ad spending at the end of the year is usually way more expensive than other times of the year because people want to finish off the year strong, but also there's a lot of holiday spending. I'm of the opinion that they kind of do need to ramp up ad spending to acquire a bunch of new players and make sure that the game grows. You did it sort of like an informal poll, though, just kind of asking people whether people in their guild are essentially sticking around or people are dropping like flies, and how did that end up?
Yeah, so there's a super secret top 100 guild club Discord, right? So I basically just asked the questions to all the top leaders, saying how are you guys doing in your clusters? I think uniformly in the top there is no issue, right? Everyone sounds like they can recruit. There's good retention on the top, which of course makes sense because all of us are probably heavily invested, and we want to. While we see that the game has issues overall, we are probably having the fun we need to have right now. We obviously would want more fun at some point, but contentment-wise, we're here for probably a longer haul. So from that perspective, that's not a problem. But the top 100 guilds is only 3,000 people maybe. So and if we say the player base has maybe 120, 150, depending on how polite we are that day, that's only a fraction of it, right? So I think that the change they did for the keys for raids is definitely a step in the right direction. I think these offers we just discussed, I think they're also very nice to get more spenders hooked earlier. And then we'll see what they do from a growth perspective. Definitely, we could always use more people to play the game. Definitely.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm going to try and keep track of that. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do that. Whether I'm going to be able to sort of accurately gauge what they're doing on new, kind of how they're acquiring new folks. Because I already play the game, so I'm probably not going to be getting a bunch of ads for it. I'm not sure. I'm gonna see if I can track that and see what they're doing anyway. But you actually bring up a very good point that we should talk about a little bit, which is this change to the raid keys, which sort of got buried beneath all the other stuff in this last update. But that is a phenomenal change that they did just to make sure that people are playing the new big piece of content that they have out, especially people, maybe aren't in these maybe not highly, but they're not in these competitive guilds that, require Discord and you need to, be doing daily activity or whatnot. This is kind of just, okay, if you're a smaller guild, we're still going to get you into the raid. And then you get to play chapter 1 of the raid. And now with the chapter 1 raid changes, you might be able to get to chapter 2 just because of how, nice the scoring is in chapter 1 now. Not nice, isn't it? But it's relatively easier. You're going to get hard stopped in chapter 2, of course, but this is just actually a phenomenal, very player-friendly change, like a broad player-friendly change that I'm very, very happy about. So you are definitely keeping an eye on it. I'm definitely keeping an eye on what they're doing in terms of new players. This is something we're very watchful of, maybe is the best way to put it. But it's a little bit nice to hear that people aren't just dropping like flies anymore, which I think was happening a little bit with the chapter before the chapter 1 changes, and definitely when there were a lot more soft locks. The soft locks have not gone away, and I want to talk about that later. But when there were a lot more soft locks, I feel like people were also dropping a lot more. Let's transition into talking about essentially Elrond, the first thing that people are, free-to-play players are going to get in terms of a legendary. Let's see. We'll talk about the Nazgul thing in a second here. So essentially, Elrond returns November 1st. I think they pushed it out long enough, plus they reran the marquee such that players who are just coming into the game are going to have a real shot at Elrond this first time around, especially if they spend money. But free-to-play players who've been playing for a while now are definitely going to be getting Elrond 5-star, possibly 6-star, if they've kind of put some energy into it. Which means our predictions were wrong. You thought early October. I thought end of October. It's kind of end of October, but it is officially in November. Where do you think this leaves the next legendary, though?
Yeah, this is a very good question, right? Because from my perspective, Elrond is actually 2 months late, right? So from that point of view, I guess the next legendary is not coming until December. It's interesting to see, at least. Again, I can't say I'm a fan because I had spent a lot of gems on being ready sooner. But it is what it is, and it benefits a number of people on this.
Yep.
Especially now that we have the full raid available, and we can see that Elrond Elves is by far the best raid chapter or raid team around. Yep.
Yeah, it's not even close in my opinion. I know people really like R2R and want to say that they are the best raid team, but they don't do as well as the Rivendell Elves in all of the chapters. It's pretty crazy how well they work. So I know you spent money, and so you were maybe a little bit chuffed to I don't know if I'm using that word correctly, to see that they're being pushed back. I think this is a good thing. There's a lot of free-to-play players, especially in my guild, and I think pushing things back means that more of them are going to be getting Elrond, and that means that after the fact, the raid scores at least in my guild, which has a decent number of free-to-play players, is going to skyrocket, because I think people are really, hoarding resources right now, so then when they get Elrond, they can basically get the Rivendell team up and running, and then it's off to the races. How high can you score in chapter 1 now? How high can you score in chapter 4 now? I'm very excited for that. I think a lot of people's raid scores are going to massively increase, and I think we're going to see a big increase in raid rewards for all guilds, basically across the board, which I am excited about.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, as you say, it's good for the wider community, right?
Yep.
Never mind my wallet, as far as that goes, right? So, but to answer the question you originally posed, right, when is the next legendary? I think November is probably going to see hopefully we'll see some shadow characters soon, because it's getting a little tedious doing light characters so often. But yeah, I don't think we'll see anything. I think there's something they will want to end the year with, basically.
Yeah, So I kind of think myself in circles when it comes to the next legendary, basically in all aspects of it, the timing, the requirements, who it's going to be. In the AMA, they basically mentioned that, the next large character, which has been said it's also probably going to be before the end of the year, will be a shadow character. We know that the next legendary is supposed to be before the end of the year. Maybe they kind of fooled us with the wording and they're only going to announce it before the end of the year, but I think they're probably going to deliver it before the end of the year. And they said that we're going to have a lot more shadow characters coming from the Reddit AMA. And we've got 2 months left. So I feel like it's got to be coming soon, but when? I don't know. I also know that, dev teams, I think, take a good, and most people take a good chunk of time off, especially in December. So I don't know how much sense it makes to push it back to the end of December either, just because I don't know how many people they're going to have in the office working and being able to, sort out any live operations issues if those come up. It's kind of, Go ahead.
I should maybe preface that. When I say end of the year, I mean no later than December 15th.
Okay.
Because to your point, right, development teams typically takes the holidays off.
Yep.
So unless something breaks specifically, right, there's not going to be a sprint during Christmas, I don't think.
Right. Yeah. So who do you sort of think the next legendary might be, or what we're looking at in terms of character releases for the end of the year here?
Yeah, this is also a very good question, right? Because apart from the leak message we saw, I'm not actually so sure any longer. Obviously, the Witch King would be nice, but the interview also said that they want to do Nazgul as a leader sort of situation, right? So I guess we'll see 5 legendary Nazgul or something, and then we'll have a squad of those at some point. The Black Beast, I actually like the Beast from the East better, right? That's what we said last episode. But the Black Beast was leaked as we show, and yeah, that will be interesting to see if the Black Beast is the legendary we are looking for, or if he's going to still have the data mined Sam type adventure.
Yeah.
Either way, I hope he's a good shadow plug and play tank, because I have a very strong desire to build Dunland, and I'm not sure how long I can keep that desire under wraps.
Yeah, I mean, Dunland is pretty interesting team for sure, but I just have no idea who it's going to be. I mean, in terms of unlock requirements, it seems to me that, if they're trying to not have super strict requirements because it's still early in the game, then maybe there's a dwarf unlock, right? But who it unlocks, I really don't know. Maybe Elf Lord Drake, that's just a joke. But there's a bunch of people's different sort of speculations in the official Discord. But let's talk a little bit about this push notification that went live and people think is a leak as to what's going to be coming next. Basically, they had this push notification that said the Black Beast is going away. Create a strong Dol Guldur squad with Charu, Reka, and the Black Beast. This Nazgul's adventure is leaving soon. Don't miss it. So Charu and Reka seem like probably named, unnamed characters, much like, the Haradrim. And the Black Beast being a Nazgul, and I believe he is the only one he's one of the only ones that's named in the books and appendices, and he's an Easterling, so Charu and Reka being Easterlings as well might be interesting here. I know people are excited and think this is a leak and things went on an accident. I am not quite convinced. I'm of course happy to be wrong here, but I went back actually and looked at the data mines, basically the code that they added in over the past two patches here. So the 10/17 and the September 28th. So the October 17th and September 28th patch data. And I didn't see anything mentioning the Black Beast or Charu or Reka. So to me, that means that it's been in the game a long time and that maybe they just forgot to take it out. Because we were originally thinking, right, along with the data mines from Tana, that maybe the Witch King was going to be coming soon, and it was going to be Haradrim Unlock, and that was probably going to come in October. And then they maybe shifted things around to do our first Shattered timeline to go in line with the end of the Mines of Moria raid here. I don't know. I people keep asking me what I think of when the next legendary is going to come out, who it's going to be, and what the unlock is, and I am very confused as to what it could be. And I feel like there's no in between. There's either I'll be like, oh yeah, duh, that made sense and was very obvious from the start. Oh, they said it was from The Hobbit. Turns out it's Bilbo or something like that. Versus I did not expect that at all. And I feel like there's not going to be an in between sort of situation. But you know, why don't we do this? Kind of off the cuff here. Why don't you tell me your prediction for who it will be and what the unlock requirements are, and I'll give mine, and we'll see. We'll check back in next time we do this.
Yeah, this is so. I guess I should have allied myself with a law buff first and foremost. But I guess as far as I've understood from what little I've gleaned is that Dol Guldur is where the necromancer sort of operates, right? So I guess it makes sense to have the Black Beast actually. So I actually believe this leak to be true. But as far as and I was also preface, I don't hope we see yet another 3-man squad team. I don't like them. They are very annoying. Please give us full teams, thank you. But other than that, unlock wise, it's I would say probably Gondor or Shattered. And this is simply because 3 marquees to make people spend some money.
I see. Okay, so you're doing Black Beast, Gondor, and wait, what was the second one?
Or Shattered, so meaning Balin, Rumil, and Better Lomian.
I'm going to say my predictions are, man, I think it will either be Azog or the Necromancer, and I think the unlock requirement will be dwarves. Okay, well, we'll check back in.
I think so. So dwarves is a very popular fan fiction, right? But yes. I guess we should narrow it down a little bit because dwarves as a whole I think is too kind.
But right? That's what they did for Elrond, right?
Well, Elrond still had at least one marquee.
At least one. And you will have at least one marquee here for dwarves as well, right? Because Bifur isn't quite out.
Well, yeah, but he will be by the... So if we look at the timeline for the marquee release, he's coming out early next month, probably. Yeah. So basically there would be nothing to really rail on. Right, there would be no real requirement. So I don't actually think that, but I do subscribe to the idea that Thorin's company tag specifically could be used for this. But this would also mean we would see 2 additional Thorin's company, where Thorin is not one of them.
Right. Yeah. I still think I'm not. My prediction is still just dwarves in general. I'm gonna stick to my guns here. We'll see.
You are a very kind man, so I know this.
All right. Let's talk about Chapter 4 and our first impressions here. Why don't you start off how you feel about it? I'm just going to play some footage from my live stream, some Rivendell stuff, and maybe some Balin stuff. But why don't you talk to us about your Chapter 4 impressions?
Yeah, so my first impression was wow, and my second impression was ouch. But yeah, I think visually they really, so kudos to CD, right? They really captured the visual aspect of the Balrog. It's an awe-inspiring, menacing super boss, right? And holy hand grenade, it's aggressive, and you need some very specific teams to do well for this. So CG, please sell us some. But yeah, I really like the way the mechanics work, even if they are a little over-favoring, cleansing. But there's a lot of good stuff going on in this raid. I like it quite a bit. I scored about 1.7 million, so it's more or less what I do for Chapter 2. A little less than Chapter 2 though. But yeah, I like it quite a bit.
Yeah. My first impressions are, to me, it sort of feels like elements from all of the previous chapters are present in this particular chapter. I think it looks fantastic. I think the Balrog looks fantastic. Somebody mentioned maybe they could have done something more with the background. That's true. But I like the Balrog in general. I didn't even notice the background, to be honest with you, until somebody pointed it out. Just having too much fun fighting the Balrog. I love the different forms he takes. I do think it's interesting mechanics-wise. That's for sure. It also runs a lot smoother than some of the other chapters of the raid. Definitely smoother than Chapter 2, which I'm a big fan of, because that was actually a big worry I had was, ooh, this looks a little bit complex terms of, resources and animations and VFX and all that sort of thing. But actually, I have not had a single issue with it so far on BlueStacks or on my phone. It runs very, very smoothly. It's a lot of fun to play. There's a lot of nuance, I would say, and I don't think people have quite figured out exactly what to do. I do one kind of maybe sticking point here is that people were correct in their initial assumptions that shadow teams don't do so well on this particular boss in this particular chapter. And I think that kind of nerfs a lot of people who maybe invested a lot into teams like Haradrim or Isengard, which is unfortunate to see. I'm also just realizing that I'm wearing the same exact shirt that I was wearing when I streamed this. I hope I did laundry between that, but I'm very impressed with Chapter 4, and I think I got just basically right at the first Gandalf shard, so basically 2.15 mil for my first score here.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of room to grow there, I think.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll see some shadow side that can actually cleanse as well. That's basically the requirement for doing well in this chapter so far.
Right.
I guess if we think about glyphs, then either the glyph needs to add a heal over time on turn, or it needs to supercharge the damage output, because that's the only way you can basically move it forward. So
right, exactly. So let me switch over to some footage of Balin's team. I think I cut it wrong, but I do end up getting 900k with my elves here. Let's switch over to some footage of the Balin team, though, that I used here. And did you ended up getting Balin? Did you end up getting Rumil?
Much to my shame, I caved. Meaning I didn't actually get him right off the hop. I actually waited at least 12 hours, but I saw so many people saying
restraint.
Yeah, exactly. Very proud of myself. But I saw so many people that said he was doing well. So eventually I caved. I did get him up. I did get him to level 60. I didn't build him more than GT6 though, and I don't even think I did 4444 on him yet. But I mean, he does actually work quite a bit, and I'm very displeased that because he's basically Sergeant Error 2.0. So his kid should have been on Gondor to begin with, but yeah, that's just me being a cranky old man, unfortunately. But I think it will be interesting to see his brother, the better Lumion, and see what they can do there. To see them.
Yeah, something I'm actually very, very curious about is how viable they are at lower star levels, because they kind of are kit based. I think, well, maybe not Orifem, because he's just a straight damage dealer, but at least Balin, his leadership ability, and Rumil's sort of overall kit, especially his passive, as well as the other pieces of his kit, but his passive are just so strong, and they don't necessarily need you to be high like star level or anything like that. So something I'm very curious about is, well, if you just got the marquees, is it worth, maybe taking them up a few levels, putting some gear on them, and maybe getting like a baby team into Chapter 4 that still, pushes maybe 100k, maybe over 100k in Div 2, just because people are struggling to, get full 5 teams doing Chapter 4 of the raid at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I put Balin and Rumil on the Rohan 3 team, and my Rohan 3 is by my standards not very built. Meaning, of course, I have Eomer at 7 stars, etc. But my Eowyn, sorry, she's only 4 star, and my Eothane is only 5 star, and they're not even GT8, but I did get them to level 60. And actually, those three and Balin and Rumil, they actually scored quite well. I think I can't actually remember my scores specifically, but I think they were either the second or third of my teams from a score perspective. So they were doing quite well.
Did you use Balin lead?
No, I went with.
You still went with Eowyn lead there.
Yeah.
Okay. I found.
I haven't maxed her out or anything. Right? She has leader number 3 or something. I haven't done a lot of investment into her and Egothane as such. It's only really Eomer that I did the
Yeah,
basic 6 and
I see.
passive 5 and all that stuff.
Just a few sort of comments about chapter 4, sort of off the beat here. Is I found personally that the Balin lead actually works better than the Biffer lead in chapter 4. In other chapters, I think I'm still preferring the Biffer lead, but chapter 4 is where the Balin lead shines, and it works very, very well. And 2, you do need some level of cleansing probably on this team, but I think 2 very important buffs to consider outside of like Eagle Eye is Expose and Might. I think there is still a big DPS check component to the Balrog, and those sort of really help your team get the damage they need to avoid bad situations like Shadow Form or whatnot.
It's actually interesting you mentioned Shadow Form specifically, but because by far I thought the fire one were harder to handle, even though you can go through it quite fast. But his output, I mean, Haradrim basically gets melted whenever they get into fire form, right? So yeah, interesting that you mentioned Shadow.
Yeah, I think it's just because it's basically right now the way it works, it's basically guaranteed that one of your characters is going to die. And then I think as soon as you start losing characters in this fight, it starts to go downhill, because when he gets into normal form, he has that move where he essentially blinds 3 of your characters. And so if you are down to 4 people, or if you're down to 3 people, then you are basically blind for the rest of the match. Unless you've got some insane levels of cleanse that allow you to keep going. That's kind of my thinking anyway, or my experience. Let me switch back over here to... We're doing a little pack talk. Back to the pack talk. We're going to transition into talking a little bit about how essentially for Balin and Rumil, they didn't offer these, what Torm likes to call packs of shame. This is $100, $100 US, and it essentially gives you a bunch of blue gear pieces, although I don't think it's enough to actually take you all the way to gear tier 8, and 1 million gold. And it costs $100 US. So when people were hurting for gold, I mean, the people are always hurting for gold. I think people decided to buy these, but they didn't actually offer them for Rumil or Balin. And I know you were basically wondering whether the squeeze ended, whether they were done squeezing the whales for this particular quarter.
Yeah, it sort of feels like it. But I would also say it looks like they've sort of shifted focus to letting us buy gear 9 and 10, because we've seen some above average crystal offers that includes the epic crystals, which I actually, again, to my detriment or shame, I did actually purchase that as well, simply because it's above average, and I did actually take my Elrond to gear 10, and I started working on gear 10 for Elrond here. Even though I consider both gear 9 and gear 10 a huge waste of gold, actually. But yeah,
this pack?
Yeah, no, not that one specifically. There
Just
was another one, I think.
I see.
Or maybe it was actually that one. But either way, it's actually quite good for its value. Typically it's 50 regular crystals for $10, and there you have so 60 of the dollars is just regular crystals, which I still have I need like 800 of them, even with this pack. And then you have, of course, all the essences and all the other things that we actually need. Right. And I would actually recommend anyone that wants to go to gear 9 or 10, start buying it in the supply store for gold, even though it costs a fair chunk of gold every day. Farming it with energy is not efficient at all. The drop rate is only like 16%.
It's bad.
Yeah, it's really bad. I spent like 1,000 energy and got 10 candles at one point.
Yeah.
So don't do that. Pick it up with gold. Let it take its time.
Yeah, I want to essentially echo something that you said previously. I have a full G9, like Rivendell squad. My arena team is G9 or whatnot. I took Elodin to G10. I don't think G10 is worth the cost at the moment. I bet you basically get such little gains. I see some appreciable gains when I take somebody to G9. So like I took G9, I took Gimli to G9, and I did automatically like start doing better in chapter 4 of the raids. I thought that was worthwhile. His damage output increased a decent amount, but when I took Elodin to G10, it just didn't have a similar effect. And it's so expensive in terms of resources, just in terms of gear, in terms of gold, in terms of essences. It's just so resource intensive. So yeah, I think maybe they've just moved on to squeezing people to do this. But honestly, if you are a spender, I don't think it's worth G10ing. Or if you're a very competitive free to play player who's at the top of their arena, I think G9 is a great place to stop at the moment. I know you wanted to also talk a little bit about how they lowered the price of the Arwen Marquee chest here.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the pains, I guess, when we get to that. But yeah, I don't understand why they would do this. I really don't. R1 is farmable, of course, and I don't see why secondary whales or dolphins coming into the game needs the discount actually. So yeah, CG, please send me the. I pulled the 8 R1 chests, so please send me the difference in mail. And we'll see where we go along from there.
Yeah, I think I understand the reason for it, and it is the same reason that they have rerun the Arwen Marquee twice and the Elodin Marquee once, and that they're offering all of these new packs. And it's essentially, okay, we're trying to increase our player base and find new spenders for the game, and we are at a point in our sort of release cycle, with Elrond coming back, that if we get people in now, we should give them the opportunity to spend a lot of money to get Elrond this first time around, even if they haven't even hit level 60 yet, let's say. And so they don't have access to the Elodin and Arwen nodes. So that is my sort of interpretation of why they lowered the price here, sort of lowering the barrier of entry for people to be new whales, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but my only concern was, or comment is that when these things were actually released the first time, we didn't have that option either, right? So we had to pay what it cost.
Yeah.
So while I'm all for new players, right? Yeah,
I think
that one probably stings more than it probably should, I guess.
Okay.
It hurts the pride a little bit.
I see. Yeah, I'm not sure it really. I think I have made more than the difference in gems from just placing well in arena with my Elrond than they've discounted it for the number of chests I spent on, I suppose. It's kind of the way I view it.
I'm not sure I want to do the total cost of ownership for my Elrond team, but yeah. But now that you say it, it's probably quick math probably puts it at 50,000 gems.
Wow. Okay, so we got one last thing we kind of want to talk about here before we move on to our Boon and our Bane. And we talked a little bit about the Shattered characters. I think I got ahead of myself and wanted to just talk about Balin, but there's something in particular that you wanted to talk about, which is essentially how they treated the info and release for Gondor versus how they treated it for the Shattered Timeline characters, Balin and the Balin 3, as I've been calling them. So essentially, for those who are unaware, when they announced Gondor month, which was on the 25th, the Gondor month was September, right? They essentially did 2 kit reveals before September for Faramir and Boromir, essentially one day after the other. And then Denethor was September 1st. And then the marquees for these characters came out later in September. And that is contrasted to how they rolled out the Shattered Timeline characters here for this month, for the month of November. So they announced them, right? And we got Balin's kit, but then we didn't get Orifim and Rumil's kit until much later in the month. Explain how you're feeling about this, and then maybe I'll add some more additional comments.
Yeah, I guess I'm just looking for the baseline in all things. I would want the Gondor approach to be the baseline for all things, right? Because at the end of the day, what was required for Balin basically is a leap of faith. Whereas for Gondor, there was no leap of faith needed because we had all the info we needed by the time the Marquee started. There's positives and negatives to this, right? The positive is, of course, we as player base, if we are interested in the team, we will know upfront. Well, we're doing the $360 this month. Whereas if you aren't interested in the 2 or 3 Marquees coming out, then I guess that also makes the choice very clear. So it is, of course, a double-edged sword in that sense. But I much prefer more info sooner than having to basically sit around and tap our fingers, right? I had Balin level 60 gear 8 long before his other character was even released or even mentioned. which I think is a shame overall. We can't help CG build hype for this if they tell us nothing, basically.
I agree. More communication early on is better, especially when it comes to new characters and how they might play and interact with the new content that they're releasing. So I think this is kind of a little bit of a nuanced discussion in that while basically on the whole, I would say that the increase in communication has been objectively good, and we've objectively seen an increase in communication. This, yeah, I was not as big a fan of this in particular. Either I, like you, prefer to have more info right off the bat. Part of me does wonder, though, that they really didn't sell this team as like the secret to chapter 4, right? Not like they did for Haradrim for chapter 2, and not like they did Gondor for chapter 3. And so I'm wondering if they just don't want to take the heat for like when people get this team and then it doesn't perform as they would expect. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would also definitely tell them not to do that, because again, you saw my reaction with Haradrim, right? So, we are human beings, right? So I think it's very good that they keep it low profile, but I think overall the kits themselves are actually quite good, and it is an interesting approach with this Shatter Timeline piece, right? Even some of the more I would say purist lore nerds appreciate how they actually implemented the Shatter Timeline from a lore perspective.
Yeah.
So I think that is a positive thing that should be mentioned more often. And I don't see why they. I mean, from a community outreach perspective, I don't see why they don't take turns with the content creators and start giving you guys exclusives. Torna has had one, of course, and this other guy.
All things Middle Earth.
Yeah, also means Middle Earth there. He got one for Denethor, right? I don't see why it is a big problem to have the content creators drum up hype for these new kits.
Yeah, as we're talking about it right now, kind of one of the thoughts that crosses my mind is essentially you may not have to hard sell the team for the big piece of content if sort of the kits speak for themselves. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's very obvious to me that Rumil's kit sort of speaks for itself. Balin's leadership ability sort of speaks for itself in how good they're going to be in chapter 4. Orphan maybe less so than the others. You wouldn't really know how well he's going to do until you get into the Balrog fight and you go, oh, okay, there is a DPS check component to this, right? But Rumil and Balin, I think, was pretty obvious reading their kits. I was like, oh, this is meant for chapter 4. And so they could do something where essentially they give us the Gondor style info treatment, release all that stuff at the beginning of the month for that particular month, and then the kits should sell themselves. And the only reason they would need to hype it up is like if maybe it's not obvious, or I don't know if.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on that train of thought as well, because like we said in the last episode, right? I fully expect the power creep to start setting in right about now. We have what we need from a timeline perspective. It will take us time to build what we have. So if you want to sell us something new and exciting, I'm all for that. But it needs to be better than what we already have. Because like we talked about earlier, right? Getting a new arena team to gear 10. That's a massive investment, right? We also talked about the Balin in the last episode, right? I would fully encourage everyone to play around with the numbers and start to theorize around a net new arena team or two for the multi-squad PvP, because the investment needed is going to be crazy.
Yeah,
and the timelines according for free to play is going to be even crazier. So plan ahead, start now, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's wrap up here, and why don't you give us your boon and your bane for this? Since the last time we did the podcast.
Yes, we actually there's only 3 weeks since last time, so we're actually getting faster. That's very nice. So that's maybe the boon. No, I mean, I think chapter 4, the raid, we have to say this is big thumbs up. It's working very well. It's visually pleasing. Mechanically, it's rough, but there's a lot of premise here. I'm very happy that they managed to get it out the door in such a timely manner. After all, there's still the sprint ahead. So yeah, definitely that would be the boon.
That's the boon.
Yeah. The Bane is still going to be around the softlock. The softlock piece. We saw some dwarf fixes. That's very nice. But soft locking is still a big issue. It's very frustrating for the community, and I would probably broaden it to say box overall. Needs to be focused upon. Like my Elrond here one, which is now approaching more than 3 months worth of waiting. And I think generally we need to get Nick on the horn basically and have his combat pod engineers tell us what's what. Because some of it might not even be bugs. It's just that the way they write the kits is not how they operate in game. And maybe we as a community need to crack down on this and go through every character and see how they perform versus what they actually written to do. Like Arwen, the difference between Arwen's special 1 is it 2, the cleanser, and the Wubute's special 1. They're actually written the same, but they don't perform the same.
I think they changed that.
Did they?
I think they updated it. Because yes,
Okay.
you are correct. It did not perform the same. Because it's basically a matter of like who has less HP in terms, and the distinction comes, is it a percent, less percent, or less overall HP, right?
No, so the difference is the cleansing. For Wubute, if he's blinded and he uses his special 1, where it says he's supposed to cleanse himself first and then attack.
Oh, I see.
But he actually attacks first and then cleanses, so he will miss his attack even though his kit says he shouldn't be.
I see.
Whereas if Eowyn does the same, she will actually cleanse the blind as part of her attack.
Oh, you mean Eowyn, not Arwen?
Oh yeah, Eowyn. Sorry.
Okay. I was okay. That makes more sense. Yeah. I hear you on that. There's some weird interactions, especially with older characters. It's not entirely clear. Characters that have come out have been more consistent in terms of interactions than some of the older characters. That's for sure. You know, like Ugluk Special 2 will add 2 stacks onto the bomber with Mauher, even though it is technically not a team up or ally attack. Whereas, you know, new characters don't have that interaction. I'll start with my Bane. You touched on it. Soft locks is one of them. They fixed some, they didn't fix all of them. I know a lot of people are still struggling in 2 particular areas. Chapter 2 of the raid is a big one. There's a lot of soft locks that go on there, and then Sam's Journey, for whatever reason, also soft locks a lot of people. So I've been seeing a big uptick in those still, and I would like to see those fixed sooner rather than later. But you already kind of mentioned that as your Bane. So let me choose another one, which is essentially, as far as we can tell from the Reddit AMA and the Tana interview, they don't really plan on adding a free-to-play way to access the epic green ability materials that you need to upgrade leadership abilities from level 4 to 5 and 6, right? You need 30 total to go from 4 to 6. And the only way to currently get them is to complete the last level of a marquee. So you're spending about $100, or mithril raid coins is another option, but nobody's getting those really at the moment unless you are already an Uber Kraken. They've started selling their own offers for them as well. I think there needs to be a free-to-play way to acquire these, especially now that Elrond is coming back and we have the time frame for that, November 1st, right? Because I think Elrond's leadership is a leadership where you actually do want to upgrade it as far as you can. There are a few other ones in the game as well. Let me actually just kind of go over here. Come on. And show that what Elrond's leadership ability looks like at the final tiers here. Right, so 5 is plus 5% max health for light squad members. That's fine, but the +1 boon duration extended is actually very, very useful in raids and arena, I would say, and I think his leadership ability is one that is definitely worth getting up. There are a few others that are similar to that, and you just don't have access to them as a free-to-play player. So my bane is that they just haven't addressed that, and it doesn't seem like they're addressing it anytime soon. And I think that will fundamentally limit how good people's Elrond teams are at the moment without for people who don't spend money on the game. My boon, also similar to yours, I'm pretty happy with Chapter 4, how it was rolled out, how it plays, how it feels mechanically, how it looks. I would also say I'm actually just pretty happy with the raid in general, the whole raid in general, especially now that we have the Chapter 1 changes. I enjoy raiding every week with my guild. We continue week over week to improve. People are doing, PRs every single week, massively improving their scores. And it's just kind of this self-fueling thing, right? It's kind of this perpetual motion machine of progress is maybe the way I'll phrase it, where essentially people are, they take all the new rewards they get from the raids, from their personal track especially, feed it into their raid teams, and then they do better next week. Obviously, that's how progression works, but it's just really nice to see week over week how well my guild is doing. And we're not, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I have a lot of free-to-play players in my guild. They're very competitive, and some of them are very competitive. Some of them are less so, but even the less competitive people are just excited to improve their scores. So I am a big fan of the experience mechanically, how it feels to play, but I'm also a big fan of how the social interaction that revolves around the raids in particular. So I would say that is my boon. Do you have any final closing thoughts here, Torm, before we go?
No, not so much. I understand your desire for the free to play. I would say that it's going to be a very edged sword again for CT to implement, because it's a costly item to toss out to the masses. So but on that note, I want to say thank you again to everyone that made it this far. It's always a pleasure to speak with the community in this way, and we'll see what we come up with for the next one.
Yeah, we've got a bet basically now, riding on for the next one about what the next legendary is going to be. And then I just want to remind people that, if you do want that audio only version, go like the pinned comment, and I will, if it gets over 50 likes in the next few days here, I will work on doing an audio only version. But with that, I do want to thank you for watching the 4th episode of the Boons and Banes podcast, and enjoy the rest of your day, and take it easy.